Hello? Okay, we got it.
Hi everyone, before we start, I just want to confirm that everyone who's in the fashion is either here for Startup Week or is here because they're part of SRO 221, right? If anyone is here for 297A, I think you're down in room 110. Okay. Thanks for coming.
All right, good morning, guys. It's really nice to see you all, and I'm happy that you all came out today. Okay, so we're going to have two ways that we're going to be recording and repeating questions. You guys are welcome to raise your hands throughout the session, but there's also two other ways that you can kind of tune in and ask whatever you want to ask, and that's through Poll Everywhere. So you're just going to send a text with IST Startup and the question to 37607, which I have on both sides of the board, and also hashtag IST Startup, which is all over the building, so you should probably know that by now. But I would also like you guys to please include the room number 202 in any questions that you're asking, just because there's multiple sessions going on right now, and I want to make sure that we can differentiate the questions and make sure Todd gets the questions that you guys are asking. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce Todd Bacastow. He's a Senior Manager of Strategic Marketing Analysis at DigitalGlobe, a leading provider of geospatial information and insight. In this role, he works to identify, evaluate, and incubate strategic growth initiatives for the company. Bacastow joined GOI in 2011 with the acquisition of Spade Act, Inc., a leader in geospatial predictive analytic solutions. During this time at Spade Act, Bacastow worked closely with the leadership team as manager of strategic initiatives. Before joining Spade Act, Bacastow was an associate at FirstMark Capital, a New York-based venture capital investment firm with more than $2 billion in committed capital. At FirstMark, Bacastow identified investments in growing technology companies, executed deals, and supported the management teams at companies with FirstMark's portfolio. Prior to his experience at venture capital, Bacastow was an investment banking analyst at the Media and Telecommunications Group at Merrill Lynch. Bacastow is a 2005 graduate of Penn State and the Schreier Honors College with a BS in Information Sciences and Technology. In his spare time, Bacastow enjoys advising early-stage companies and working with entrepreneurs. He currently serves on the board of directors for InnoBlue, a student-led startup incubator at Penn State University. All right, and it's my pleasure to introduce Todd.
Introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? Is the mic working? I think we're good to go. Great. Well, I'm really excited to be here today. It's always a lot of fun. It's a great experience to come back to campus and have a chance to meet all the students that are here, as well as talk a little bit about some of my experiences, and hopefully those will be opportunities for you to learn about some different career options you may have, or some different ways in which you can develop entrepreneurial skills. So as Lauren said, I currently work for a company called DigitalGlobe, and DigitalGlobe is the leading provider of Earth imagery from satellites. We have a constellation of 5 satellites, so we own and operate. We provide satellite imagery to all of the location-based services apps that you use, either on the desktop or on your phones. And we also help provide intelligence and support decision makers across businesses, as well as within the U.S. government as well. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about today is mapping your path to entrepreneurship. And so you might be wondering is that I don't work for a startup, and I haven't started my own company yet, but there's some things along the way to the role that I'm currently in terms of developing an entrepreneurial skill set and thinking and working with entrepreneurs and thinking about entrepreneurship that I think are important takeaways. The majority of students' reality is in IST is that it's fantastic if you have an idea for a startup, it's a fantastic opportunity and time for you to pursue those opportunities and to test out different ideas. You're at a point in your career where it's really a pretty low risk environment in order to do those things. But the reality is that most students will go to work at medium or larger size companies when they first graduate. And I think one of the key points that I want to leave you with today is that there's also a lot of great ways for you to develop a skill set that's transferable towards entrepreneurship if you decide to do that later in your career, or allow you to be what's called entrepreneurial, which is entrepreneurial within a medium or larger size company. And that can help create other opportunities for you as well. So when I was thinking about how to start off my talk today, what I wanted to do is maybe just set the stage a little bit and talk to you when I was a student in IST and why I decided to come to Penn State in the IST program. So I started in IST in 2000, and so it was the second year that IST had been around. It was actually called the School of Information Science and Technology. It wasn't formally a college yet, it had a real startup feel. So we didn't have this building that we're in. We were borrowing space from other classroom areas and computer labs across campus. The Dean Thomas at the time, he was kind of felt like a startup company CEO. And in the midst of all this, we were in the dot-com boom. So you had a lot of really innovative companies that today we use every day. Companies like Google and Yahoo and Amazon.com, eBay. At the time, there was also a company that a lot of people were using to get music called Napster, which people don't use as much today. But so there was a lot of innovation in the technology space, a little bit different than how it is today, and I'll talk about some of those differences. But it was a really exciting time to be a part of IST. And we had this sort of sketch of the building, which is kind of like a back of the napkin sketch. And so one of the things that was a big change for me coming into IST, the first course that we took was IST 110. And so the model for IST 110 was structured around what's known as problem-based learning. And so I'm not sure if that's still the approach that's used today for IST 110, but the basic idea around problem-based learning was that the class was presented a problem. You were organized in teams, so you got to know your classmates really well, and then you really focused your energies around learning everything that you needed to learn in order to solve a problem. And so what that didn't mean was just learning technology development or learning how to code something just because that was something to learn, right? It was all really centered around how do we solve a problem. And so, for me, I think one of the early things that I learned is that it's important when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or trying to identify ways that you can eventually seek a career in entrepreneurship, you really want to focus around identifying a valuable problem to solve. And so, I was really excited as an early student in IST, and I had an idea so to put things in context, we didn't have iPhones. This is a picture of me sitting on the hub lawn around 2001. And there were these devices which were called personal digital assistants. I don't even know if anybody still calls them that. They were called PDAs. And what was really cool was they were just starting to become pretty affordable. Initially, PDAs were kind of more of the Palm Pilot devices, which were black and white, and you could keep your calendar and keep a list of tasks and things like that. But they came out with Pocket PC devices, which were starting to have a little bit more rich content. You could do more things with them. You could browse the web. You could send email. And so one of the ideas that I had, and to put this in context, I think Google Maps was launched around 2005, 2006. So this was around 2000. I had an idea that it would be really neat to create a mapping application for the Pocket PC, which I called Lion Map. And so I had this idea, built this application, and the idea was that you could find your way around campus. You could find out different information, for the various buildings. I was also a Lion ambassador, so this was kind of like a high-tech way to give a tour on campus. So the problem with this, though, was that one, most of initially the Pocket PC devices didn't have cellular connections, so everything had to be stored on the device. They didn't have GPSs built in like your iPhones or your other smartphones today do. And so you had to have this cumbersome attachment, which was in the form of a compact flash card, which is like a memory card, but the GPS fit on the top of the device, which is not pictured here, and kind of hanged off to the top of the device. So not a really sort of practical solution. And so as I thought about, as I was looking at full-time opportunities, and I had a number of internships, which I'll mention a little bit later. But as I was thinking about ways in which I could, grow in my career and develop additional skills, what I realized is that, really it's when you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, it's really about starting a company. It's about building a business, not only building technology. And so, as I thought about opportunities and ways in which, I could get the kind of background that I would need in order to think about building a business or build business cases and solve business problems, I took what I would call, an unusual career path coming out of IST. And my freshman roommate actually was a finance major, and I learned about opportunities in finance in a field called investment banking. And so I had a couple different internships that were more technology-oriented, but I really wanted to learn more about business. And so I managed to get an offer at Merrill Lynch in the media and telecom group. And so I spent the first 2 years of my career actually in New York working on Wall Street. Investment banking, what is involved there is essentially you're advising companies on their financial strategies, building financial models, a lot of sort of pitch decks, which are in PowerPoint. And so it was a great foundation to develop a finance skill set to combine with my technology background that I had from IST. And so after I spent 2 years with Merrill Lynch, and I had an opportunity to join a technology-oriented venture capital firm in New York called FirstMark Capital. And so one of the really neat opportunities about working in venture capital was there were really three aspects of my role with FirstMark. The first part of the role was finding new companies to invest in. So that was a really exciting part of the job because I talked to hundreds of companies and their founders and CEOs about what sort of problems were they solving, what technology were they building to solve that problem, and how are they differentiated in the market. And so we essentially identified companies, we pitched them to the partners at the firm, and then ultimately the companies that we decided to invest in, I worked on all the sort of diligence or due diligence around an investment, built a financial model, and then after we made an investment, there were companies in what was called our portfolio, and so our portfolio companies were existing companies. Some of those companies were investments from prior to me joining FirstMark, but the idea was to help the management teams and add value beyond just the financial part of the investment. So, the map I have here, these are a few of the companies that I had a chance to work with in New York that were highly innovative and disruptive in their spaces. I'm happy to talk about some of these companies a bit later if you have questions. But really, a diversity of experience, and some of the companies I actually had a chance to work directly with the management teams. Other aspects of the companies, it was more on helping them advise around a particular problem or help build a financial model for them. And so, as I thought about how what the next step of my career might be, I really got interested in developing experience in a business in an operating role. And so, one of the companies that I had a chance to work with was a company called Spade Act. And so Spade Act is a company that was based in the Washington, D.C. area. And so after my third year at FirstMark as an associate there, I joined Spade Act. And so my role at Spade Act was really centered around identifying strategic opportunities for the company. And so in one of the things that I learned in joining the team at Spade Act was I had a chance to work with entrepreneurs, and I got to know the founders of the business and the CEO well, and they remain great friends today and coworkers. And so one of the important lessons that I learned from the CEO of Spade Act, named Mark Dumas, is he said, one of the keys when he was thinking about starting Spade Act was to get started, because the risk to start the business for him, it was all relative, right? And so his background was he was working for a defense contractor, had gone to work at a startup, and then that startup didn't work out, but he ended up joining or ended up starting Spade Act in the midst of that. And really, the point that he was making to me was that that he felt like he had a great skill set and background where if Spade Act didn't work out, then he most likely was going to be able to go back and still find another job, right? And so I think especially earlier in your career, when you have a lot of flexibility and you don't maybe have some of the commitments that you may have later in life, think about, it's risk is relative, right? And so think about risk. It's sort of an individual question that you have to weigh. But think about your opportunities and what some of those alternatives might be. And if you want to go back to another role that's not at an earlier stage company, those jobs will most likely be there as well. And so, this was a picture of, when in the early days of Spade Act that Mark had shared with me. This was in his basement. I think he actually started the company in his then girlfriend's apartment, who's now his wife. And so one of the things I wanted to point out is, this picture was taken, I think, at 3:18 a.m. So you definitely, being entrepreneurial and starting a company, it definitely will involve long hours, but really kind of just getting going is I think a key aspect of it. And don't be deterred by what a lot of people perceive as risk. And so Spade Act had the company was very successful within the national security space, and so essentially what Spade Act was providing is known as geospatial predictive analytics. And what sounds like a complicated term, but really what it means is Mark and the team at Spade Act developed software and a methodology that essentially could look at where past events have occurred, look at how those events are related to all of the factors in an environment, in a geospatial environment, and then essentially build a model that helped anticipate where similar events, either risk or opportunities, might occur. And so this was a capability that Spade Act was, in early 2002, found in early 2001, 2002, and really kind of developed over the course of about 8 years. And so in 2010, Spade Act was actually acquired by a company called GOI, who had really had a heritage around Earth observation. So Spade Act was acquired for $46 million. So it was a great acquisition. And really the whole vision behind the acquisition of Spade Act was to begin to expand from just satellite imagery and Earth imagery, which provides a great view of a current view of the situation on the ground, but then also begin to bring in other forms of intelligence to help answer difficult problems for decision makers, which goes back to the earlier point that it's really about solving a problem for somebody that's really valuable. And so today, actually, which we'll talk a little bit later, but GOI is now part of DigitalGlobe, which is the company that I'm currently a part of. And it's really this technology around geospatial predictive analytics and insight is really a core part of how the company is evolving towards more of a insight-driven and information services-oriented business. So another aspect of being entrepreneurial that I think is an important point is to be really resourceful and creative. And in the role that I'm currently in within DigitalGlobe and formerly GOI, there's great opportunities to be entrepreneurial within larger companies as well. And so you remember the idea that I had as a student called Lion Map. And so one of the benefits of being part of a larger company is that there's a lot more resources and you can do a lot of really cool things. And so with a constellation of satellites and the ability to provide mapping solutions for decision makers, I had an idea for an app. And so I worked a lot actually with Mark, who is the CEO of Spade Act, and on this idea. And we pitched the idea to my boss at the time, who is the head of Tony Fraser, who is the head of the marketing part of the organization and oversees our insight and analytics part of our business, and had the idea to create an iPad app for GOI. And so it's a little bit different than my original Lion Map idea, but what was really neat was to be able to take the content that we had from our satellites and incorporate this into a really compelling interactive app that would help people understand both how the world around them is changing, to get insights to those events, as well as get a clear view of various places around the world. And so this was a really fun project to work on, and it served both, it was a great marketing tool for our company. We incorporated it into our booth as an interactive part of the exhibit for trade shows. We also were able to use it as a sales enablement tool. And so we actually had such a great response at those events. We also launched it in the iTunes App Store. And so here you see a picture of, this is campus. I'm zoomed in here in the IST building. And this is a magnifying glass tool that you can actually interact with. And so I think the lesson learned here is that there's some really great ways that when you think about the resources that you may have, even though I'm not currently working for a startup company, it's more of a medium-sized company. There's some really neat things you can do within the context and be innovative. And this is something that didn't previously exist, and it was an idea that we bubbled up and created, and were able to have a real impact in the company. It was featured on the home page of the company when we launched it, and our CEO talked about it in town hall meetings as well. So a really nice opportunity to have an impact. So, I think one of the key points is that everyone's path to entrepreneurship or to being entrepreneurial it can be a little bit different. Some of I talked a little bit about some of the experiences that I've had, ranging from Penn State and IST to working in New York and Merrill Lynch and working in venture capital at FirstMark, as well as then joining a company that FirstMark had an investment in Spade Act, and then now becoming part of GOI and DigitalGlobe. And so I think the other part that I don't have on here, but I think that's important to mention, is that I actually had, I think I did 4 internships when I was at Penn State. So the internships are a great way to both get different experiences as a student, as you're considering different career professions to go into, but also, those internships often build and the skills build. And so I had interned with Merrill Lynch. I had a scholarship from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And so I think all those experiences can really build, and combining those experiences in a discipline can actually create some really interesting opportunities. So combining my experience in finance, as well as, which has helped me with some of the projects that I've worked on and the business cases that I've built as part of a larger company, as well as then the experience around the national security space. So I think in summary, it's really about solving problems that are valuable for people, being problem-centric, building a business, not just technology, getting started because really the risk is relative, and now's a great time. There's so many resources as a student that you can take advantage of on campus, as well as some of the resources that are out there. And today you don't have to make significant investments of infrastructure, as a lot of the companies did in the dot-com boom. You can actually provision those resources from the cloud as you need them, and just sort of invest as you grow. And then really it's about being creative and being resourceful. And that's whether you're starting your own company, or you're part of a founding team in a startup or an early stage company, or if you are entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial within a medium or large size company. So thank you for the opportunity to come speak. I look forward to hearing your questions, and it's been a pleasure to be back on campus today.
Questions. So any of you guys want to raise your hands? But I ask, when you guys ask a question, the black button you can see on the right of your computer, just press that while you're asking questions.
Go ahead.
If you go back, if you came to college now, what major would you pursue?
I think, IST is, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but it's a great major, and one of the reasons I selected IST as a major is I had looked at a number of different majors around campus, but one of the great things is you have a lot of flexibility to take courses that are in support of your major. The IST classes were great, but some of a lot of interesting courses that I took were actually outside of IST. So I took courses in filmmaking, and I took courses in art around computer graphics and design. I took actually have honors in meteorology as well, because I took some meteorology courses, and my honors thesis was around looking at location-based services, and one of the applications I looked at were essentially wireless weather stations. So I think I didn't talk much about my thesis work, but really that was kind of bringing together a lot of the different experiences that I had on campus. So I think it doesn't necessarily have to be IST, but any major where you can get experiences that help you learn about different areas to solve problems, I think will set you up to be successful in the real world. Because a lot of the things that you have to work on in the real world, it may be very well outside your major. And so the part of the organization that I work in at GOI today is part of solutions marketing. And so that wasn't my major, but it's really about bringing technology and a business case together to solve a problem for somebody that's of value.
After gaining a certain amount of experience, you knew that you wanted to go to a different company, or how was your thought process?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. So one thing is that I certainly had no idea when I was a student in IST that I would end up initially pursuing a job in finance. In investment banking. In fact, I didn't, early on, the only really, so the way I learned about that career opportunity was, as I said, through my freshman roommate. So I think, I had a notion of what I wanted to do when I was starting out in IST, and I really knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial that combined business and technology that would solve problems for people, but I didn't really know what that job title might be or the job description might be. And so, so I think one of the things is that so when I've looked at opportunities, I think keeping kind of your overall direction in mind is important. And so that way, you may have the role that you're currently in. There may be some aspects that you're building, like having a chance to work in finance, help me really get an understanding of the basics of finance and how to build financial models and how to think about a company from the bottoms up from a financial perspective, which is something that I didn't focus on while I was in IST. And so I think keeping that longer term vision is important, and going out and building the right skills for that. And I think some of it's also that there's logical transition points within your career you'll find. So typically when I was an analyst in investment banking, it was generally sort of a 2-year role, and a lot of people would look for opportunities where they could develop other skills, such as some people went more on the trading side, went to like a hedge fund, or other people went to a private equity firm. And so my focus was at earlier stage with technology, so venture capital was a great fit as kind of a subset of private equity. And then, it's similar type of opportunities, where I really knew that I wanted to develop some operating skills. And so it seems like, were different points within each of those roles where it became like kind of the next step started to become really clear.
All right, well, we have some questions online. So what's an average day?
What's an average day like for you at DigitalGlobe?
So I would say an average day is, there's the first thing that people are doing is I think people are very connected. So people like this morning I was on the phone with my boss at about I guess it was about he'd called me a little bit before 8 o'clock, and we were on the phone. I was on the phone the way over here in the car, and so we were there on the phone or on email. I think really kind of working to kind of plan the things for the day. I generally have about 3 or 4 projects that I'm working on at any given time where I know that there's certain things that there's either deadlines or there's a certain part of that project that I'm working to make progress on that day. And we're all part of the organization where we're fairly well connected with a lot of different parts of the company. So for me, what that means is for example. earlier this week, I was in a meeting where we were helping to do training to our sales team. So we closed the acquisition for GOI there was, I guess, in early February. So it's still pretty recent. And one of the things we're trying to do is just work on the integration of the two companies. So we were doing some additional training around our